2009 to 2013. He's someone who has a deep background in business, in healthcare. He's also a summer constituent of mine, and I'm just really thrilled to have him here. So, Dean Solomon.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Be back at the State House, where I used to frequent now and again, especially to be here for a forum on such a timely and important topic, and to be among some of the legislators who are leading on this and other issues to create a stronger and more prosperous Commonwealth. I want to acknowledge the Senate President, Karen Spilka, and especially my friend Senator Julian Cyr, who recently introduced legislation to promote employee ownership in Massachusetts. Before I sing Julian's praises, if I can just quickly tell a story, the word from this. My first visit to the chamber of the Massachusetts Senate was back in the early 1980s when I was in the elder care business. I was running a nursing home in North Andover, and the Medicaid budget, which was very important for my industry and for my business. And as you know, the legislature generally does the budget in the waning hours of the fiscal year, and so I came up here to lobby members of the Senate probably June 30th, and I had two friends from the region, Senator Pat McGovern and Senator Sharon Pollard, who I knew, but I didn't know the powerful chairman of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, who at the time was Chet Atkins. And so I was in the outer lobby, I suppose, waiting. Sharon and Pat, Senators Pollard and Senator McGovern came out to see me, and they said, wait here, we're going to go in and get the Ways and Means chair. And they went in, and they got Chet Atkins, and they whispered in his ear, we have a live one. And some of you who know my history may know what that meant. But I've known Julian's family for almost as many years. My wife, Susan, and I have enjoyed eating at Adrian's, the family's restaurant in Truro. I think I first met Julian in 2007 during President Obama's campaign. I'm proud to see him so ably serving the Commonwealth, the communities who take part in the Commonwealth here in the State Senate. I'm also immensely proud that today's event and Senator Cyr's work on employee ownership has been assisted by a senior at Tufts University and a Tisch College scholar, Christopher Wingard. I want to recognize Sarah Allred, who's here, who runs the Tisch Scholars program for us at Tisch College. Tisch Scholars take courses that are designed to help them identify and address some of the most pressing problems facing our world. And they undertake year-long service and leadership projects in local communities and with nonprofit organizations and government agencies. The Scholars Program is a multi-year one, and in previous years, Chris worked at Haley House, where he woke up before dawn to work a 5 a.m. shift in his soup kitchen. He's also led conservation initiatives over the summer. But this year, as an intern for Senator Cyr, who represents Chris's hometown of Brewster, he wrote a 35-page paper on employee ownership that has significantly informed the Senator's proposed legislation, as well as many of the topics that will be discussed here today. Students like Chris showcase the mission of Tisch College, which is to prepare every student at Tufts University for a lifetime of civic engagement and prepare them to be ready to contribute to their communities, the nation, and the world. I'm very pleased that through programs of Tisch College, many of our students have gotten to work in the state government, here at the State House, at the State Attorney General's office, in the State Treasurer's office, in the Governor's Washington office, and elsewhere. And if there are any members of the legislature that want us Tisch College intern, just let us know. These opportunities provide our students with valuable skills and experience, often igniting in them a lifelong passion for public service that will ensure the Commonwealth and the country will have a future generation of great young leaders to follow in the footsteps of people like Julian Cyr. In addition to educating Tufts students, the research team at Tisch College studies and promotes activities and participation that improve the civic health of our communities. For example, researchers at Tisch College helped to craft the Civic Education Bill, which was recently passed by the Massachusetts legislature and signed into law by Governor Patrick. We have also conducted research on the relationship between the civic and economic health of communities. Several years ago, my colleague Peter Levine, who will moderate this morning's panel, led a study that revealed that metropolitan areas in the United States with higher levels of civic participation recovered more rapidly from the effects of the 2008 recession. Employee ownership of businesses is another way that civic engagement and economic prosperity go hand in hand. Companies in which workers have an ownership stake don't only improve workers' standard of living, they also create a sense of unity, cohesion, and purpose that leads workers to feel more invested in the success of the business. And that is why, according to research, employee-owned companies are more resilient during economic downturns. I saw this firsthand when I was the United States ambassador to Spain during one of the most economically challenged periods in that country's history. I had occasion to visit in the north of Spain the headquarters of Mondragon, a federation of worker cooperatives with more than 75,000 employees, generating more than $13 billion in annual revenue. It is one of the 10 largest Spanish multinational corporations, and during Spain's economic and financial crisis, it fared quite a bit better than most other Spanish companies. At a time when economic insecurity and inequality threaten the civic and democratic fabric of many communities right here in Massachusetts, it is certainly worthwhile to explore strategies that can lead to increased and more broad-based prosperity. So I'm grateful for your invitation to join you this morning, for the opportunity that Tufts University and Tisch College have to play a role in these important conversations. And I must apologize for having to leave now. We have the founder of Warby Parker on campus to give you the Corporate Citizenship Award, and I have to run back to Medford. But I'm delighted to be here, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Solomon, and really to have the entire Civic Life program here, which made possible this event. Chris's work in our office, I often say, we're only as good as our staff in our work, and having someone like Chris has been really helpful to us in being able to get our hands around employee ownership and move the issue forward. I'd like to ask my friend and mentor and our remarkable Senate President, Karen Spilka, to join us. She has been a champion of employee ownership issues for over 30 years, prior to joining the legislature, prior to being in the auspicious position she's been in recent years. I think it really shows the dedication and really the important wonky policies that we really work to try to advance here in the Senate and throughout the legislature. So, ladies and gentlemen, Senate President, who made today's event possible, Karen Spilka.
I'd like to thank Senator Cyr for hosting this event, as well as his hard work and commitment to this issue. He has really brought it back forward to be a force in this, and so we thank you and we thank your staff, and we just are very excited about that this issue has had a really big resurgence, and you'll hear in a couple of minutes why this issue is near and dear to my heart. I'd like to acknowledge Representative Paul Mark. Former Senator Dave Magnani, I think, is here or will be here, and you'll hear a little bit more about that connection. Dean Solomon, I'd like to recognize State Senator and Senate President Pro Tem Will Brownsberger. Jay Ash, great to see you. Charles Story, Aaron Dam, Bando Padhayaya, Jason Ewis, Rick Sullivan, Elise Magnato Cleary, Richard Freeman, Adam Vardekar, David Hammer, and Chris Mackin, who has been a long-time champion of this issue, employee ownership involvement for many, many years. My experience with the Mass Office of Employee Involvement goes way back. In fact, believe it or not, I helped write the bill in the mid-'80s. It's actually a funny story. Then Senator Dave Magnani, who was the senator from the Framingham area, was involved in wanting to write a bill and getting a bill done on employee involvement and ownership. At the time, I worked for the state. I worked as an attorney in the Office of Employee Relations over at Ashburton Place. We negotiated all the collective bargaining agreements for state employees. We did all the litigation, the arbitration, the unfair labor practices, NCAD. We were appointed special attorney generals to go to court. And so that was my role when the director of the Office of Employee Relations said, Karen, somebody over in the Senate wants to write a bill. We want you to participate to protect our interests. That was my role, to protect our interests. We think it may have some sort of collective bargaining significance. So if you could just sit in, that would be great. So I started participating in the meetings, and only to discover, this is how political I was at the time, that David Magnani, Senator David Magnani, was my state senator. I didn't even know it when I started out. So things have changed. So we ended up working on it actually for several years. He and his family had his 2 sons during that time. We had our 2 sons, and we became friends and celebrated when it was finally done. And he asked me, he said, Karen, you seem to really know a lot or care about this. Would you be in charge of the actual writing of this bill? Now, I had never done that before, but I said yes, because I realized the importance that this whole issue could have for economic development and on behalf of the Commonwealth. So I took over the writing of it and organizing it. So it was very exciting when the bill was signed, and actually I got my first Senate citation that was up on my wall at home for many years on this employee involvement and ownership bill, which from the legislature we have to laugh that we got that. So it's just a funny story, and it has come full circle. So for many years, there was funding for it. It sort of fell off, and that I'm really excited to say that with funding that Julian Cyr, Senator Cyr, has really prioritized and advocated so hard for over the past 2 years, we have the opportunity to offer the services of the EIO once again, and for a new generation of business owners. This is, I think, a really strong movement here, not only in Massachusetts, but across the country. My husband and I have both been small business owners at various points in our careers, and so I know how challenging it can be, but how empowering and personally fulfilling it can be as well. The ability, though, to start and successfully run a business is fundamental to who we are as a Commonwealth and as a nation. We must be doing everything that we can to make business ownership more accessible, not less. We need to help keep our small businesses strong and thriving, and do everything in general for particularly our small businesses. They are the backbone of our economy. The services of the revitalized EIO will help existing small businesses transition to the next generation of business leaders, people who want to take on the joys and the challenges. We know that there's a lot of challenges as well of business ownership, but who may be currently shut out of existing paths of ownership. In a time when income inequality is so high, it's the highest in the nation, This is about expanding opportunities for wealth creation and empowerment that comes from business ownership within our communities, as well as successfully growing the wealth and creating a legacy of success in our communities, all of them across the state, so that the American dreams are real and within reach for more of our residents. I'm thrilled that you've taken time out of your day to join us. As Dean Solomon said, you know, by owning your own business, you feel more invested, you're more empowered. You may have less sleep at night, but you know, you certainly are more empowered and feel that you have a stake in the outcome. And they are more resilient as well, so they tend to weather the economic downturns, which we all know we will face again. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here in support to celebrate this announcement and to share your expertise and experiences in employee ownership. And I really hope that this conversation is just the beginning, and that you'll join us in spreading the word across the Commonwealth, and spread the word that the Commonwealth is committed to creating and preserving employee-owned businesses. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd now like to introduce Charlie Story. Charlie is the president of Harpoon Brewery, one of the finest ESOPs in Massachusetts and the country. Charlie has been with Harpoon since 1996, and along with CEO Dan Canary, is a strong leader in the employee ownership community.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues Mike Portarelli and Aaron Moberger, fellow employee owners of the Harpoon Brewery. There are many people in this room who helped us get on the ESOP path, help us get where we are today. The job is not done. There are many companies like ours that still need resources and support. I thought I'd start with a quick background of the Harpoon Brewery. We were founded in 1986. If you were to turn back a hand through time, craft beer, that term had not even been coined. So it was a Coors, it was really a Bud Miller Schlitz world. Coors is still sort of a romantic brewery located in the Rockies. You couldn't find the beer east of the Mississippi. So starting this company was really a bold idea. 3 founders wanted to do it. They put together the funding to make it happen, and sort of in the face of all odds, started what is now, the largest brewery in Massachusetts and still a top 20 craft brewer out of an industry that now numbers over 7,000 breweries in the nation. So fairly early on, one of those founders decided that it was time for change. He wanted to pursue other interests. He's gone on to a successful career elsewhere. Then roll forward now to about 2014, the 2 remaining founders who held most of the company's shares. One of those gentlemen was thinking, you know what, I think I want to do something different. I've got still some running room with my career, and I want to pursue some other interests. So that immediately raised the question, well, what happens to those shares? Where do they go? And the obvious answers are, well, strategic buyer, one of those companies I mentioned earlier, Miller Coors, AB InBev, perhaps a financial institution, a private equity firm. At that time, craft beer valuations were very high. They were still pretty positive. Had we not known about the option to become an ESOP, probably one of those 2 other opportunities would have been the door we would pass through. But the idea of pursuing employee stock ownership plan was very interesting. It gave the selling shareholder a good market for his shares. And what's more, it provided the opportunity for the company to remain an independent small business here in the Commonwealth, to continue to be in charge of its own destiny, chart its own course, preserve the jobs. Today we have 148 full-time employees that live here in the Commonwealth. We have 61 part-time employees, and we are fully committed to becoming 100% employee-owned by 2025. We're currently 48% employee-owned. And, you know, so I talked about the awareness. Had we not known to go down this path, we would have never taken it. But going down that path wasn't easy either. It's a complicated transaction, complicated administrative burden. Certainly the benefits outweigh those costs, but those costs are real. And so, you know, I wanted to speak up for all of my colleagues at Harpoon to say that the resources, the opportunities that are being considered here by the senators, the entire legislature of the Commonwealth are truly meaningful. They're truly meaningful to existing ESOPs as well as those that could be in formation opportunities for small businesses across the Commonwealth to take this path. What it's meant for us, I think Aaron might be speaking a little later, and he could probably say it more articulately than I can. But certainly engagement, we really truly do feel like owners. We are owners. It's a meaningful contribution to our personal financial statements. And you know, there's this sense of teamwork that comes out of it, because when everyone's an owner, it's everyone's job to see the best interests of the company succeed, and that aligns so closely with everyone's individual role they play at the company. So it's really made our lives, it's improved our lives. I'd like to think it's improved the performance of our company. Hopefully you've enjoyed a Harpoon beer and found that to be a rewarding experience as well. So really appreciate this opportunity to speak up. Thank you, senators. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Charlie. Nothing really gets done in this building without partnership between the Senate and the House, and yes, the corner office. And Representative Paul Marsh has been not only a partner to me and to the Senate on this work, but really the one who's been pushing the envelope on employee ownership since 2011. Rep. Mark hails from Peru. There's very few colleagues in this building that have a further commute than I do, but he's one of them. And so he actually rearranged some important district things to actually be with us this morning, and I'd like to ask him to come up and say a few words.
He is Peru the town, by the way.
Okay.
That's in the virtues. So thank you, Senator Sear, and to Senator Spilka for hosting it and putting this event together. As the Senator was alluding to, yeah, this has been a long time coming for me, and this has been an important issue to me for a couple of reasons, some personal and some things that I've seen in my district. And so the personal reason is when I was about 12 years old, 2 days before Christmas, on the news, the TV news, me and my mother and my sister were sitting there on the couch, and we saw that the warehouse where my father worked was closing down, and they were all being laid off. And they didn't have cell phones or internet or text back then, so my father couldn't tell us. We learned on the news first before anyone could get that information to us personally. The company decided it was more profitable to move somewhere else, relocate, and no concern at all for the workers. Employee-owned businesses don't announce on Christmas Eve that they are closing with no regard to their workers. They have the same chance of success or failure as any other business, but every single person that worked there is an owner and part of that process and part of that decision-making process. So that's a very big, important difference to me. As I first was campaigning and things I've seen in the region I represent, we have lots of employee-owned businesses, lots of cooperatives, because they're sustainable. We care about sustainable energy, sustainable employment, and sustainable agriculture. And all of those things tie together through the cooperative model. It's a chance for businesses to grow and thrive and stay local and stay committed to Massachusetts. And really, here in the legislature, that's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that our state is successful. The people that live and work here are successful and have access to the best opportunities and partnerships. And when you're part of the decision-making process, when you're an owner, when you have something invested in your job, you're gonna be a better worker, and your company's gonna hopefully do better because everyone in there is staring in the same direction. And so when I first got elected, I asked Chris Mackin, what's the most important thing, the best thing we could do to promote employee ownership in cooperatives? And he said to me, The Mass EIO has been zero funded since 2008. Get that back up and running. I said, okay. So as a freshman representative, I filed it in the budget in 2011. Went nowhere. So we tried to get in 12. Nowhere. 13, 14, 15, 16. Then we all got really lucky because Senator Sear was elected in 2016 and took office in 2017. And for the first time, I had not just a partner, but a champion on this issue working with me on the Senate side. And unfortunately, she's not here to hear my praise for her, which is always good to do in front of the Senate President. The Senate President became the chair of Ways and Means, and I never knew the reason, the background, why she was so passionate about this issue. But she was also a true partner on this and getting this funded. And so finally, on the 7th try, for the first time, we got the budget item for the Mass EIO back up. And I couldn't be more grateful to my partner, Senator Sear, for doing such great work on this, and to Adam and Chris and so many, David, so many other people that have been involved in this process from the beginning. And I'm just really excited at this announcement and really honored to be here. So congratulations, everybody.
I think it's interesting that the two champions in this building on this issue recently both come from very small communities. And I'd like to just talk a bit and tell you folks why I became interested in employee ownership. So I grew up, like most Cape Codders do, in a family that was tied to the service industry. My parents came to Provincetown in the 70s from suburban Connecticut, where they left that for the free spirit of the Outer Cape. And as many people do, they made a life in restaurants. In 1985, they launched their own business. They named it Adrian's Restaurant. My dad is Adrian, my mom's Annette. And it was started off as a 20-seat cafe in Truro Center. If you've been to Truro Center, it's like a post office and a little, it's like 3 buildings. I don't know, is that more than Peru, Paul? So they started a 20-seat cafe with $7,000. They had in savings, they got some loans from friends. Adrian's Restaurant was a hit. They expanded it first to a 60-seat restaurant on Route 6A, and then eventually to a 200-seat restaurant with panoramic views of Cape Cod Bay, Provincetown. Adrian's Restaurant quickly became a fixture of the Outer Cape community, and I was all along for the ride. As an infant, I was in my bassinet. They hung my toys where they put the slips for the orders. My sister and I worked, I think, 14 or 15 seasons in that business, bickered, served people, served folks like Alan and his wife. It's actually a great restaurant work. It's a great, restaurant work is a really great introduction to retail politics, which I've been making good on since. But when my parents finally decided that it was time to step away from the business, from the daily grind of running a restaurant, of working 13 out of 14 shifts, they looked for buyers. But the margins of a seasonal restaurant, while they can provide a good living for a family, they're rarely an attractive return for investors or on investment. Also, in recent decades, the cost to start a business on Cape Cod has skyrocketed, and I think that's the case across the Commonwealth. But particularly for us, we have this red-hot real estate market, and it's essentially made restaurants are actually more valuable to be converted into condos. The red-hot real estate market has also wiped out housing, so it's really created a workforce crunch, especially for the seasonal workers that we have, or that we need. My parents actually explored the possibility of selling to longtime employees, but they couldn't figure out how to make it work. Mass EIO wasn't there. And so in the end, their best option was to close the restaurant. So after 28 seasons, they sold the business in 2016 to the adjacent motel, which used the facility as a function space. It was a great run, especially for an industry where most restaurants fail in the first 5 years. But still, I always kind of couldn't help but wonder, had there been a way to continue Adrian's Restaurant, yes, the Outer Cape would have maintained and sustained one of our favorite, restaurants and destinations, but it also would have provided a good life for another family. And as I mentioned earlier, those costs, you can't start a restaurant or any small business with $7,000. You probably can't start it with $100,000. And so that really kind of spurred my interest in how do we really support employee ownership, particularly for small businesses. Employee ownership actually is a topic that's been around for a while. It's also seen broad bipartisan support. President Reagan saw employee ownership as the next logical step in our economy. He said it is a path that benefits a free people. And he partnered with Speaker Tip O'Neill to pioneer the modern set of federal incentives around employee ownership. More recently, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is pushing legislation around the U.S. Employee Ownership Bank. Rarely do you talk about President Reagan and Senator Sanders in the same sentence. The data also really bears out these benefits. We know that employee-owned companies create jobs 3 times faster than their traditional counterparts. Employee owners have 90% higher median wealth, 30% higher income from wages, and 53% longer tenure in their jobs. The MassEIO, which you're hearing about, was shuttered in 2008 due to the financial crisis. You've heard earlier this was created by a partnership between Senator Dave Vignani with assistance from then aide Karen Spilka. So what Paul and I really sought to do was to work to restart funding for MassEIO with strong support in the House and from the Senate President and the Chair of Ways and Means. And we had some great partners in doing that collaboratively in the Baker administration, particularly from former Secretary Jay Ash, who's here today, as well as Assistant Secretary of Business Development, Nam Pham, to really partner to recreate MassEIO. I believe Matt Lee is here as the Chief of Staff of Mass Office of Business Development. So it's been a lot of work, but thanks to what we were able to fund in 2017 and 2018, I'm able to announce today that the Mass Office of Business Development has recently approved contracts with 2 Massachusetts organizations to restart the MassEIO. So in late March, just a few days ago, the Mass Office of Business Development approved a contract for this current fiscal year with the ICA Group of Northampton and Working Wealth of Cambridge. So these 2 entities will be working together to promote and work within the existing employee-owned, with existing employee-owned companies and with prospective ones to assist in business-owned employees and that development. So I'm very excited that after many years, we'll be able to restart this, that we will have a resource that folks like my parents can turn to as they're thinking about, as Charlie was talking about earlier, how do you continue a business, how do you promote employee ownership? And so now I'd actually like to ask the ICA Group and Working Wealth to come up. David Hammer is here from ICA, and Adam Bartakar is here from Working Wealth. Gentlemen, would you just come up and give a few words? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sear, and everybody for being here. I may be the most excited person in the room for this. This has been a long, cumulative effort, as Senator Sear and Representative Mark detailed, not led just by friends and allies, but by true champions. Representative Mark in the House before Senator Sear came on the scene, and then from day one, Senator Sear has been a tireless champion of this policy area. And as Senate President Spilka noted, one of the beautiful ironies or coincidences really of this office is that it is the brainchild of Senate President Spilka. And what's funny is I can actually add my own sort of timeline to this as well. In the year that Senate President Spilka, then I suppose aide Spilka, passed and wrote this bill, I graduated from high school. I was born. The year that she passed this, I was born. And the year that it shut down, I graduated from high school. And in the time in between, I watched my mother build a beautiful small business in Brookline that I worked at. I worked at, similar to Senator Sear, all through high school and college. And I also saw her confront these 3 options that we've now heard Senator Sear detail, as well as Charlie Storr. There are three options that generally confront a business owner at the end of their run. You can sell the business to an institutional buyer or competitor if you're lucky. You can pass the business to your children, or you can shut it down. And 2/3 or more of businesses simply shut down because the first two options are very hard to pursue. The margins aren't terrific on a restaurant, or a small single-family diagnostic imaging center is just not that attractive to a buyer. With this office, we now have a fourth option. If you have an employee, or if you have a group of employees, you have a buyer. And if you live in a community, and you love the businesses in that community, they have an option to stay around. There are 42,000 other businesses in the Commonwealth that share this exact same problem. Owners who are going to be looking at retirement over the next 7 to 10 years. Those 42,000 businesses represent over 750,000 jobs in the Commonwealth. And as my colleague and friend David Hammer is going to detail, we have a plan to reach every corner of the state, every hamlet in the Commonwealth, and bring this fourth option to those 42,000 businesses, so they do not have to experience the same dilemma that my family's business, Senator Sears' family business, has faced, and we can finally breathe life into the vision Senate President Silka had.
So I just want to say thank you, David Hammond, Executive Director of the ICA Group. Thank you to Senator Sear, Representative Mark, and Senator Spilka for all the work on this. I started at ICA 11 years ago, and probably the second meeting I went to, that my boss brought me, he said, oh, by the way, we work with this guy, Chris Mackin, and we run this office, this state office. And I had introduced myself before my boss did, and I had to look down at his business card. The Massachusetts Office of Employee Involvement and Ownership is a mouthful, and when I messed up the ownership and the involvement. But then, just a few months later, funding for the office disappeared, right? And the challenge that we faced as a group in supporting this work in the state is that it is really difficult to support businesses unless you have sort of a base of work and a base of funding to do the outreach, to do the support, because it is hard, it is challenging, it is difficult. But it's necessary. Just to give a little bit of sort of a data point here, on January 1st, 2021, the first generation of baby boomers are going to start turning 75. So that's 10,000 people will turn 75 every day from 2021 through 2041. That's who owns businesses in Massachusetts. That's who owns the businesses that are going to disappear and close unless we figure out how to save them, right? So we have an enormous crisis in the state of Massachusetts that we're going to be coming across. And unless we sort of really figure out how to integrate business succession planning into business owners' ideas, what is that next exit, we're going to lose these businesses. And these are businesses that you don't hear about when they close. It's the 12-person machine shop, it's the 15-person small manufacturer, it's the restaurant that closes. These don't make sort of the top, the big headlines, right? These are little tiny businesses that disappear, and unless we're really working to save them and to sort of actually, and the larger businesses as well, right? So there's sort of two sides to this work. Unless we're really working to sort of address this issue in a really direct way, we're really going to have a real problem in the Commonwealth. Which is really thrilling to be able to be part of this group that's really trying to take a proactive step in addressing this. It's sort of fortuitous timing. The federal legislation, the Main Street Employee Ownership Act, was just passed last year. What that did was it really directed the small business development centers to work with small businesses to support employee ownership. One of the things that we look at in terms of the sort of opportunities with the Mass office is to really integrate our work into the existing small business support community and really kind of take all of the energy and resources that are out there right now and really make sure people understand this fourth option. So we're just really thrilled to be able to do this. And we've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, so we don't have a whole lot to show for it. But in a few months, we really expect to have some real exciting results and are just thrilled to be part of this. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And these gentlemen, and many in the room, have been tenacious in advancing this issue. You know, I really think, and another piece of why I've been always so attracted to employee ownership models, there's so much that we do as a Commonwealth that benefits large corporations. Just take a look at all the tax credits that we have available. And really, this is something that where the state is coming in, and for pretty meager resources, several $100,000, providing support, innovation opportunities for small businesses, which just too often are left behind. And I think in an era where we see widening inequity and inequality, reestablishing this office can help many across the Commonwealth reclaim that pride of ownership, the creation of shared wealth, and restore our sense of community in the process. So we're going to transition now for a little more education on this issue to a panel, and I'm going to introduce Peter Levine in a moment. I also want to invite people, please help yourself to, we have food, we have coffee, we actually have catering from an employee-owned business. Olio Culinary Collective actually has made, I think we have a vegetarian breakfast straw, if I'm not mistaken. So please help yourself with some breakfast. We're going to now start with a panel, and I'm going to invite Peter Levine to join us, who's going to moderate the panel. Peter is the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and the Lincoln Carlene Professor of Citizenship and Public Affairs at the Tufts University Jonathan Tisch College of Civic Life. He has a deep background in the study of civic life in the United States and public policy. So he'll be moderating the panel that we have this morning that will close out our program. Peter? Thanks.
Thanks so much for this event and for your leadership, and also Representative Mark for your leadership. Just a quick sort of check on where the room is, which will help our panel. I think our panelists are coming up while I do this. This will help us to address what you need from us. So raise your hand if you're really quite conversant with the notion of employee ownership. So you already want to know the details of ESOP taxes and stuff like that. Raise your hand if you've never really heard about this before. Okay, so we've got the full spectrum. And I'll ask you a different question. How many of you are pretty solidly committed to getting this done? You want to see, Bill, you want to see lots more employee ownership in the state? That's most people. Okay, and how many people have some serious questions that you need to have addressed? You're not sure you're on board. That's also good, but a lot fewer. Okay, so we will be brief. Should we, where's the center? Should we go just a little over 11?
Yeah. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's getting breakfast right.
Yeah, for sure. But I also believe in closing things out when it goes to close out. So I think our main goal will be to introduce this group so that you know the expertise that's in the room, so that they can also talk to you informally. So we'll go a little over 11, but we won't go much. So mainly, introduce you. Fortunately, if I had to raise my hand when I ask your questions, I would have been in the middle, not an expert at all on employee ownership. I will just quickly say the reason I am here, because it's something that nobody else has said in an argument for employee ownership. So I'll just quickly say it. I think that we Americans, since before our independence, have been pretty good at governing ourselves in small units, in town meetings, in churches, church basements, in PTAs. And that's the only reason that we've governed ourselves pretty well in buildings like this and in the U.S. Congress. That's where we develop leaders who can govern, and that's where we learn to understand how self-governance works. So I see employee ownership as one of the places where people can learn to manage their current common affairs. And so that's the framework that I would throw out there. But let me introduce Maggie Cohn, who waved and who works for the Cooperative Fund of New England as Southeast Loan and Outreach Officer. Chris Mackin, who I know a little bit, from Ownership Associates, founder and president. Elise Magnato-Cleary from Cape Air, Director of Community Engagement and Employee Owner, right? And then Aaron Moberger from Harpoon Brewery, Cellar Manager and an employer owner. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to speak. It would be great if know, you couldn't be concise because otherwise it will only be your opening statement. So we'll start with Mandy, and my question is really very general. What's your involvement with this issue, and in a way, why would people need to know that they can talk to you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can do
Can
this.
Speak from here.
Try to do this.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The Cooperative Fund of New England is a community development financial institution that has been lending to cooperatives across the spectrum since 1975. We make loans primarily to worker-owned businesses, to cooperatives, not so much to ESOPs. ESOPs are a larger financial lift, I would say. We can talk about that. And we're in this space because we see worker ownership, resident control of housing, consumer control of businesses as really inherent in democracy, and specifically with worker ownership as a way to keep good jobs in communities and to give workers control over their working environments. I would say in the last several years, we've also gotten pretty deeply involved in co-op conversions, which is exactly when a departing owner sells the business to his employees, and we again can make a loan to the employees to purchase the business from the seller.
That's perfect. That's nicely
Good morning, everybody. Well, my background in this has been alluded to kindly by some other people. I started in the business in 1978 as one of the founders of the what was the Industrial Cooperative Association. It's now the ICA Group, and I'm glad that they're still partners in this business, and they're a great group. I am with Ownership Associates in Cambridge. We mostly do after the transaction training and education, mostly with larger companies of the Harpoon variety around the country. I also am a partner in American Working Capital, which is a merchant bank that provides financing for larger ESOP transactions. I guess one of the things that this office, I should say, my company did take the contract, and we ran this office for 9 years because when this legislation was passed in 1989, the program went inside state government, and it was the position of Senator Magnani, who sadly I guess never made it in the room here. He was not pleased with how it got buried by the bureaucracy, and so he wanted to contract out to private sector people who were doing this work. And so my group at ICA took this out into the countryside, worked with all sorts of companies, all sizes and shapes, from '99 until 2008 when the budget crisis happened. And many of the companies, I see some of the people in the room, Rexcut, and I see Joe Berry there from Morgan Stanley. There are a number of companies, Fall River, and around the state that were helped by this office. And I just to give you a little bit of statistics here, I was looking at this. There are, on the ESOP side, which is the for larger transactions, there are about 145 ESOPs with 36,000 employees in Massachusetts right now. I mean, Harpoon is the best known one. They're a consumer-facing brand. Everybody's seen them. But there are lots of different shops all around, companies all around the state that are doing this. And I'm hopeful to just close here that the office will keep in mind two tasks. One is that we need to keep the 145 ESOPs and probably 50 cooperatives healthy and get them the resources that they need from the state. And have them go on into the future, as well as shake the trees and find the new opportunities that are out there. And I know there are lots of those opportunities. So those are two important roles to play.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Elise Magnano-Cleary. Thank you so much for having this event this morning, and Senator Cyr and Senate President Spilka and Representative Mark for all of your work on this issue. I am the Director of Community Engagement and Employee Owner at Cape Air. We are one of the largest employers in southeastern Massachusetts. We're celebrating our 30th year this year in 2019. When we started Cape Air, when Cape Air was started, it started with one route, one airplane, and a handful of employees. We currently serve over 30 communities throughout 4 regions in the United States and in the Caribbean, and we have over 700 employees. However, our most proud feature is how we celebrate our ownership structures, and we do that in 2 ways. One, we are a majority employee-owned company at 55%, and we also have a profit-sharing program, which of course is common with ESOP companies, but certainly not exclusive to ESOP companies. So I'm thrilled to be here today, happy to answer any questions even after the panel, and it's my hope that this office will be a conduit, not just for companies interested in employee ownership, but connecting folks who are interested in becoming an ESOP or sharing ownership through different structures to serve as a conduit for folks that already do that with their existing businesses. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron from Hartland Brewery. Want to echo the thanks for support from our legislators, Adam, Chris, David for getting the office back up and running as well. And from our standpoint, we were really grateful, as Charlie said, to have founders that knew about an ESOP as an alternative. In craft beer, a lot of deals have happened since then that have gone to private equity or strategics, and we easily could have been one of them, if not for Dan and Charlie, the other senior leaders. So Mike is back there with me. We work in the cellar, which sounds like a nice word for basement, but it's where we ferment, condition, and finish all the beer. And I think most of us certainly didn't know what an ESOP was before our deal in 2014. So to be able to, I think, just sort of tell our story and speak to the important changes that we've been able to make in our department. Just one example, to sort of put a number to it. We thought that we needed a new filter a few years ago to finish the beer at a speed that we needed to finish at to meet our goals. And at the time, we were about 6 batches through a day. And a new filter would have been about $500,000. And now we do 8, 9, 10 batches a day. The same equipment because of the opportunities that people saw and how engaged they are in their work. And that's with tighter quality specifications, using less filtering, kind of stuff like that. So having gone from not knowing what an ESOP was to seeing an engaged workforce that can do stuff like that has been a remarkable thing.
So, I think it's that you all know what these people bring to the conversation. And I did have some questions, but it might be better just to...
Keep going, we're good.
Keep going?
We got the room.
Okay.
And yeah, it's sort of State House protocol. If you got something else to do, slip out. But
Right.
if you want to go another 15 minutes or something.
Sure, perfect, okay. In that case, I won't kick it off, and you should all be thinking of your questions though. So, the first one is if you want to talk like you know what you're talking about in this field, you have to know the difference between a co-op and an ESOP. And we've already been saying that, that language today, but doesn't mean everybody knows what it is. So I'd love it if the two people on my right could talk about that. Maybe Maggie focusing on co-ops and Chris on ESOPs a little bit. Just what do they need to know for the quiz?
I actually see a couple of people in the audience who are from worker co-ops.
Yep.
Would it be, I would actually love Janae or Courtney or James, are you still there in the back? If they could have like 2 minutes to talk about the way their co-op is structured and sort of what it is.
Why don't we do one and...
Yeah, that would be
and
totally
then
fine.
sort of a quick handoff of who's...
Janae, do you want to, you're closest.
You're crafty.
Public speaking is not my forte, so please excuse me. So we are a newly formed co-op. There are 4 of us. We're 100% women-owned, 50% women of color, and we are queer-owned. We do strategic communications and PR and development and business development for other co-ops and like-minded organizations, like nonprofits and unions. We do profit sharing. We have a policy that anybody that works for us for the equivalent of 6 months full-time, regardless if they're contract or part-time, will have a pathway to ownership through the board.
And how do you make decisions? That's the
Sure. We make decisions mostly by consensus, and then when we have to, there's a challenge, we'll do it by the majority.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So in your head, just completely, maybe Chris could describe what an ESOP looks like, which is where you're.
Okay, so an ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan. An employee stock ownership plan is a form of defined contribution benefit plan. It's a retirement plan. It is like a 401k. but by law, it can invest primarily in employer securities. It creates a legal trust called an employee stock ownership trust. That trust does something that's rather magical. If a company decides to set up a trust like this, the trust goes to the bank to borrow the money to buy out the founder of the business. So this law and this trust structure, all made possible by federal law, gives workers and middle managers, let's say, a place to stand, to be able to go to the bank, to borrow the money, to be able to buy out a valuable business like Harpoon. It sort of overcomes what is often an obstacle in people's minds. How can working people with no money buy valuable businesses? Well, they can't from their savings, but they can if there's a legal structure that allows them to participate in the financial world. And that's what federal legislation that's been around since 1974. Initially, most of the tax incentives attached to this employee stock ownership plan idea came about in the mid-'80s. And there are 7,000 companies now, including 14 million workers, who have taken advantage of this structure. And as I said, about 150, 160 here in Massachusetts.
And how do they make decisions? So it's not by...
Yeah, it is not by consensus. Is that correct, Charlie? You don't make decisions by consensus. I think that's fair to say. No, well, there are best practices. I mean, here's something, it's a longer discussion that we can get into, but this is a big church. You know, we've got ESOPs, we've got cooperatives. They have more in common than they have. They're different from each other. They share ownership in a relatively democratic way. In the case of an ESOP, shares are generally distributed according to W-2. So you take your annual income as the numerator, the denominator is the total payroll of the company. That's how the ownership is shared. And there's permission in federal law that you can, as an ESOP, you can be as democratic as you want. You can have consensus decision making, you know. But generally speaking, employees are represented by a trustee. I mentioned that there was a trust. And the trustee consults with the workers, and the trustee is involved in, depending on what percentage of stock is owned by the trust, to elect the board of directors of the company. The board appoints management. And the best practices of the most successful ESOP companies like Harpoon, and you heard an anecdote from Aaron, and there are many more, are the ESOP companies that open up their books, that talk about what's facts and figures of what's going on in the company, get workers involved in problem solving, getting workers involved in making suggestions about what to do. And some of them go as far as having workers or representatives picked by their workers to be on the boards of the companies. There's a wide spectrum of practice.
Perfect, thank you.
So I would say one major difference between ESOPs and co-ops is that in a co-op, every worker owner has one share that is the voting share. Now, it may be a 4-person co-op where the 4 owners essentially also act as the board and make all operational and managerial decisions. It may be a 130 worker owner co-op like Equal Exchange, where the members use their votes to elect a board. The board then makes a lot of those larger decisions and hires a manager who oversees day-to-day operations. So there is a spectrum, but the difference is that voting shares are assigned 1 per worker. People may have other shares beyond that allow them to accrue more of the profits, but control of the company is a flatter playing field.
Thank you. So allowing myself to make an editorial comment, you could have a really interesting philosophical debate about these different models, but it is not necessary to do that to support this initiative, because it allows a lot of different formats, and there may not be one format that's appropriate for every context, right? So now I'd like to turn to the 2 employee owners on my left, and if you could both just talk about, in a way, what it's really like at the live level, but specifically what's the culture like, and how do you feel that the culture is different because it's employee owned?
Last year, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston came to K-Bear and did a fantastic feature with our president and CEO and CFO and some other employee owners. And I thought one of the employee owners, who's one of our station managers and has been with the company for over 20 years, answered that question perfectly. And you can see it for yourself if you YouTube Federal Reserve K-Bear. But the full video. But she said, you know, when somebody comes up to the counter and you have a frustrated passenger or somebody who really wants to speak to somebody and they go, I want to talk to the owner, right? Has anybody ever been in a job where somebody actually comes up to you and says that, especially if you work frontline? And the person can look back and say, I am an owner, right? So there's this general sense of ownership and pride in the company and knowing that you're working with your teammates for not just a better bottom line, but to improve the culture of your organization. And I think that's, for us, that's really the core and the spirit of employee ownership.
I think we have a kind of parallel experience to be able to talk from working on the seller floor, especially when we have to roll out like a new product. And a good example, I don't know if anybody's had the Dunkin' Porter that came out last fall, which was a tasty beer and a lot of fun to make. We had to figure out how to get coffee into sometimes 16,000, sometimes 30,000 gallons of beer. And it's a process that we sort of riffed on different times, but not something that we tried on that scale. And it could have been one of those, I think, if we weren't owners, like, oh man, this is really going to get us this time. Instead, it was like, this is going to be a great thing, especially in that sort of second wintertime spot. You know, winter warmer than I think it's our longest of the season, right, Charlie? One of the longest since the early 90s. Late 80s, 89? All right, yeah. So to go from the #2 spot to have this great big hit, we had to figure out how to do it. And instead of people sort of saying, oh man, oh no, it's like, we really need this, we need to figure out how to do it well. And we did, we figured out how to do that more efficiently than a lot of other similar processes. And that was ground floor work from our employee owners.
So I do think we have time for a couple questions, at least a question or two. So what's on your mind? Yes, you were the person who wasn't sure. So
I'm considering doing an ESOP. We have 300 people and employees here. And why would I reach out to your office? I heard a lot of great information, but are you advising me? Are you helping us? Are you bringing, why would it bother?
Good, great question. I think it's probably correct. Yeah.
Well, the role of the office when I managed it, and we'll see what the young fellows do, it might be different, is to be a resource, sort of a neutral resource for you, to help you make sense of the various specialties and excuse me, expenses that you will have to incur if you want to go down this road. Make sure you're getting fair prices. There are, if you're going to be doing this, one of the first things you'll have to do is have an independent appraisal of what your business is worth. You're going to have to hire attorneys, the attorney that represents the trust as well as your own counsel. You're going to have to raise financing, and there's a healthy private sector that plays these different roles. And when I was managing the office, what I would do is sit down with people like you, first hear your story, see if I could answer any preliminary questions you might have about the kind that we're even talking about here this morning. But then also make sure you're aware of who the different private sector players are who will be bidding for your business. And if you're comfortable with it, sharing to me what the estimates are that you're getting from the private sector and what the costs are, making sure you're going to have a fair price. There was more than one time I saved Massachusetts business owner a lot of money because they were not getting fair prices for the services. So that's a function that this office could perform.
Did that help? I think your question is really important for this group, so if you want to follow up, you're welcome.
You know, most small businesses like to boil it down to the bottom line because our time is important.
Right.
You know, I know there's an ESOP association out there.
Yes.
Is that the same thing that you're doing except from a public?
So there are three trade groups: the ESOP Association of America, the National Center for Employee Ownership, and the Employee-Owned S Corporations of America. S Corporations of America are the 100% S Corp ESOPs. So the ESOP Association has chapters around the country, and we have a very strong chapter. Joe Berry, could you hold your hand up there, Joe? From Morgan Stanley has been a key player in the New England chapter. And it is a great place where companies get together and have conferences. They have specialty conferences on technical topics and big annual conferences to bring ESOPs in the region together to share best practices, basically. In fact, and I'm sure the center, I did when I ran it, the center will be working in conjunction with these chapters to try to bring people to the meetings of the New England chapter and share more stories.
I think time for one more question. No pressure, it doesn't have to be good. Well, maybe I'll turn it back over to the senator.
Any closing comments from the panel at all? or?
Yes.
I was hoping we'd get this question because so I guess I'll present the question, and I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel how you find your own best practices in addressing it. One of the challenges that we face as an ESOP company is communicating what that means out to employees, right? Not just employees that have been there 10, 15, 20 years, but employees who just started last week, or employees who are coming onto the job, right? So what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my retirement plan? How does the profit sharing program work? And I can tell you that at Cape Air, we have made internal communications a strong priority, and communicating that out, doing video features, partnering with organizations like the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston for outside folks to come in and interview our employees and feature that both internally and externally.
Great. That seems like an important angle on this. Does anybody else want to say anything? Does Susan want to take it?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to overdo it on the communication side. And so to get people early, like you said, the first week, I think probably lots of ESOP companies have their version of like an ESOP 101, just to get acclimated to some of the concepts and stuff like that, which again, not knowing what an ESOP was coming in, it takes a little bit of adjustment, and then thorough ongoing communications on that. It's something that we have to work on all the time as well. It's definitely one of the biggest challenges. It's a great point.
Thank you. So that's a good way to end. I think we'll turn it back over. Did you want to say a final word?
I want to thank, let's give it a big round of applause for our panelists. A lot of folks coming from all over the continent, from Cape Cod to the west, and so thank you. I also want to acknowledge my colleague, Representative Jonathan Hecht, who joined us. And I also want to give a big thank you,
Lindsay Sabadosa.
Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, thank you. Who's also here, great representation as well from the west, thank you. And I also want to acknowledge the staff that put a lot of work into making this happen. From my team, Pat and Jordan and Michelle, Chris, Rob, Jeff, Karen. As I said, we're only as good as our staff in this building. I'd also encourage those of you who maybe haven't been to the Senate in a long time, or maybe this is your first time. So this is a very special room that we're in. This is the Senate reading room. Historically, this is actually where the Senate chamber, or the Senate met when basically the State House was just this room, the next chamber, and the governor's office. And then take a peek into the Senate chamber. It's just received a $26 million renovation and restoration. It is glorious. And really, this is the people's house. This is a museum that we get to work and live in and breathe life into. In this Senate, the Senate President has really tried to make sure we're doing that. So there's, you'll see up in the rafters a quote from Frederick Douglass and a bust of Frederick Douglass in the chamber. You'll be seeing a bust of a prominent woman in Massachusetts history. If you look at the Senate President's suite, if you have an opportunity to peek in there when it's open, we actually have images of significant women from across Massachusetts history that's in there. So this is just some of the work that we're trying to do in the Senate to make this a more representative place. Just like employee ownership, this is an opportunity. So a lot more work to do. I think stay tuned as the office gets up and running, comes to a town near you. Thank you for the time, all of our panelists today, to folks who spoke, and please enjoy this room. There's a little more cooperatively made breakfast product, so please enjoy that, and just thank you so much for your time.